Welcome to Only the Over, the average bettor's favorite podcast. I'm your host, Jared, and today it's the first installment of Only the Over. Yes, NFL has just gotten done with week 2, but we're just going from there. Basically, this podcast is we're going over my picks. I have been recently getting into sports betting, and I like sports betting. At least, what's available to me in the state of Wisconsin. Obviously, there's state legislation that disables me from using, FanDuel, DraftKings, those type of things. So I'm able to use an application called Underdog Fantasy. That's the majority of the places, or that's the main place where you will see the picks on this podcast from. I am in no ways a professional bettor. That's why the tagline of this podcast is the average sports bettor's favorite podcast. Because basically, I'm going to be super transparent about small sports betting for fun. I do it with my buddies. It's a good time. One thing that I keep in mind all the time is I don't put money into the app that I'm not willing to lose. Obviously, sports betting is completely unpredictable. You never know what's really going to happen. So only bet money that you're willing to lose. If you're being a dumbass and you're betting $100 and that's the last $100 that you have, you know what? That's obviously your decision, but that's stupid. Obviously, be smart with your money. Only bet what you're willing to lose. I can't iterate that enough. Down in the description, there's a call to action if you're having gambling issues, and there's a number down there that you can call. So, yeah, anyways, let's get into it, right? Week 2 of the NFL just happened. I'm recording this on Tuesday morning. You'll be hearing this on Wednesday morning prior to the Thursday night games. So Monday Night Football just happened. Obviously, the Philadelphia Eagles lost at home to the Falcons. Kirk Cousins had an amazing sub 1 minute drive to put the Falcons up late. And basically the Eagles, could not come back. The Falcons ended up winning 22-21. So that Monday night matchup was fantastic. But let's get into the surprises of the week. First up, we have the Vikings in Minnesota, 23-17, beating the 49ers. Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson actually may be viable options in the NFC North to bet on. Their offense looks fantastic. Don't know why the 49ers defense was atrocious, but you know what? You win some, you lose some. It is week 2. But keep an eye out for Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson. Jefferson went for 4 receptions, 133 yards, and a tud. Sam Darnold went 17 for 26, 268, a tud, and an INT. Obviously, it's Sam Darnold, still known backup in the NFL. Obviously, he had a bad stroke of luck when he first got drafted into the league, but beating his former team is fantastic. That was awesome to see. I'm a Packers fan. Obviously, you see me wearing a Packers jersey right now. But seeing Sam Darnold be successful, it's hard not to root for the guy. The next surprise of the week, Saints 44, Cowboys 19 in Dallas. The Saints came into Dallas and just absolutely smacked them. Derek Carr, Alvin Kamara, and Rashid Shaheed absolutely played their minds off. Derek Carr went 11 for 16 for 243, 2 tuds, and a pick. Alvin Kamara, 20 carries, 115, and 3 tuds with 2 receptions as well for 65 yards with 1 tud. So 4 total touchdowns for Alvin Kamara this past weekend. And finally, Rashid Shaheed, 4 receptions for 96 yards and a tud. That man has blazing speed. I really want to see him succeed there. I got he's been kind of on the back burner, second, third option for most of his career. Obviously a great returner, but his athletic ability is fantastic. Him and Chris Olave are dangerous when Carr is on, especially with Kamara in that backfield. Also with Jamal Williams back there too, so a good 1-2 punch. We know how good Jamal Williams was for the Lions and the Packers. One thing I want to talk about, is the Cowboys defense bad or are the Saints just explosive? Obviously, it's week 2. The Saints are playing their minds off. Cowboys, this happens every once in a while. Does the conversation have to happen with Mike McCarthy? Will he be fired? Who knows? That's always the conversation with the Cowboys. But the Saints are crazy. I would bet the over on touchdowns and yards for Kamara. He is having one heck of a year so far. Lastly, I'm only doing 3 surprises of this week. Lastly, the Raiders 26, Ravens 23 in Baltimore. Fantastic win from the Raiders. They were down by 10 late in the fourth quarter. Minshew actually figured out he had good players on his team. So obviously Minshew is not the best quarterback, but he went 30 for 38 for 276, a tud and a pick. Then he finally realized who was on his team. He has Devontae Adams, the best receiver in the NFL. 9 receptions, 110 yards, and a tutty. I have him personally on my fantasy team, so last week was very disappointing, and this week he came through. Thank God. Also, they have a rookie named Brock Bowers at tight end. 9 receptions, 98 yards. Unfortunately, no tud, but still a great stat line for the rookie tight end. Did the Ravens choke? I think they choked in the fourth quarter 100%. You're up 10 at home in the fourth quarter. I think they had 13 or 12 minutes left anyways when they were up 10, but still you got to find a way to win that game, especially at home. Lamar Jackson went 21 for 34 with 247, a tud and a pick. They finally realized Derrick Henry was a person, so that's fantastic. He had 18 carries for 84 yards and a touchdown. Zay Flowers also had 7 receptions for 91 yards and a touchdown. So, yeah, crazy week 2. Obviously, my Packers, they were doubted. Malik Willis had to come in for Jordan Love because he's injured. And Josh Jacobs had a crazy day. They had over 200 yards rushing as a team. They had almost that in the first half. They had, I think, sub 50 rushing yards in the second half. So the Colts defense really showed out in the second half a little bit more. But it was a hard-fought win. Malik Willis played fantastic. Josh Jacobs played fantastic. Our receivers knew what they had to do. Game plan knew what they had to do. So that would constitute as a surprise of the week, but I'm a little biased, obviously. Just wanted to talk about that. So let's get into this weekend's picks. The recap, this weekend's picks. Obviously, we had a slate of them. Obviously, I shouldn't say obviously because you don't know that. We had a slate of picks. Starting on Thursday night, I had James Cook higher than 0.5 rushing receiving touchdowns. Josh Allen higher than 248.5 passing yards. Keon Coleman higher than 3.5 receptions, and Waddle higher than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. One of those 4 hit. On Underdog, you can select flex for a 3 or more man pick'em. I did a 4. Obviously, James Cook went off that game. I think he had 4 total touchdowns or 3 total touchdowns. So that higher than 0.5 rushing receiving touchdowns was a great idea. Josh Allen decided that he didn't need to pass the ball, which was obviously, you did not. When James Cook was absolutely annihilating the Miami Dolphins defense, you did not need to pass the ball. Keon Coleman had no receptions. I think he had 1 or 2 targets. Horrible pick. They were locking him up. They had Jalen Ramsey on him most of the time. So, yeah, Jalen Waddle, obviously with Tua, with everything happening with Tua on Thursday night, Jalen Waddle, he played okay, but Tua, before he got hurt, was not having a great game. He had 3 picks, 3 turnovers, obviously aren't going to help you win that game. But, yeah, we did not do well. I think we bet $5 on that one to win, possibly up to 56-65. So we did not win that game. Saturday, I ended up going to the Alabama-Wisconsin game. So I put in a little bit of a slate. We had a 4-man pick'em again, $5 to win $25.80. We had Tyler Van Dyke higher than 6.5 rushing yards for his longest rush. Ches Malusi higher than 11.5 first quarter rushing yards. Will Pauling higher than 47.5 receiving yards. And Jalen Milroe higher than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. All of these hit. Luckily, Tyler Van Dyke, it sucks. His first drive, I think his longest rush that I won this bet on was the one he got hurt. Pretty sure he's out for the season. I haven't seen anything yet about his knee. But he did hit that 9 yards for the longest rush that he had today. Reasoning behind that one, Alabama's defense is amazing. Our O-line, or Wisconsin's O-line, is not the best, so I figured he'd be scrambling a little bit. Ches Malusi, higher than 11.5 first quarter rushing yards. I hit that one. He ended up having 20. For the first half, Wisconsin actually played pretty decent. Their defense was amazing. They're in the first half, their offense kind of stalled out, but against Bama's defense, Bama's so good. But yes, he hit that 20 first quarter rushing yards to put the over on that. Will Pauling had an amazing game. Obviously, the best receiver on the roster, was a safety outlet for Brian Locke, the backup quarterback for Wisconsin. Will Pauling in the second half was that safety valve for that backup quarterback. So he ended up almost doubling that the line of 47.5, ending with 83 receiving yards. He is, he's the best receiver on the roster. I think he had a chance at a touchdown, ended up getting overthrown in the corner. But yeah, great receiver. And obviously, lastly, JALEN MILROE. I had higher than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. He ended with 2. JALEN MILROE, Heisman favorite. We ended up winning that full 25-80 on that pick. So currently we're up $20.80 currently because we lost 5 on that first pick. Secondly, we had a underdog. They had a promo going out, CeeDee Lamb higher than 0.5 total yards. Obviously, you got to take that. He's going to hit that over no matter what. He ended with 90 total yards. And then Taysom Hill, I went for a weird one. Taysom Hill higher than 15.5 rushing yards. Past couple games, he's had over 30. Actually over 25, I think, rushing yards each game. He ended with 18. That was just 2 picks for $15. We ended up winning that one. So we're currently up, 35-80. The next slate I did with my buddy, we had 6 picks for up to $152.15. It was a 6-man pick'em. Derrick Henry higher than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. Justin Herbert higher than 200.5 passing yards. Kyren Williams higher than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. Deebo Samuel higher than 12.5 fantasy points. Lamar Jackson higher than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. Josh Jacobs higher than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. The ones that hit, Derrick Henry, 1 rushing and receiving touchdown. That one came late in the game against the Las Vegas Raiders. Talked about that game a little bit earlier. Won't go into it much deeper. Kyren Williams, he hit his against Arizona this weekend, higher than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. He had 1 rushing and receiving touchdown. It's unfortunate what they got going on that team with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. For Cooper, it's 2nd year in a row being injured. That sucks, and Puka Nacua is on IR, so he'll be out for some time. So look to bet overs on yards, total yards, and rushing and receiving touchdowns for Kyren Williams. He will be getting the majority of the playmaking touches on that offense. And then finally, the last one that hit out of this 6-man, we only hit 3 out of 6, was Deebo Samuel over 12.5 fantasy points. That one ended up happening late in the game as well. So that was tough. San Francisco did not play well, obviously with McCaffrey out. A little bit of different dynamic. Jordan Mason kind of had a bad game. But Deebo Samuel hit that one late. He had a couple good receptions. He went over almost 100 yards for receiving, so that helps as well. The ones that didn't hit, Justin Herbert against Carolina only had 130 passing yards. Kind of similar situation with the Bills where Justin or Josh Allen did not have to throw the ball. Very similar with Justin Herbert. He did not have to throw the ball that much to produce. I think he had 2 passing touchdowns in that game, and Carolina is just absolutely atrocious. So you can throw out a 3rd-string quarterback, and you'll beat Carolina. Lamar Jackson, higher than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns, did not hit. That one's just a chance type of thing. He gets a lot of reps running the ball. So, that one was just playing the probabilities, the odds that he gets a rushing touchdown. I was banking on that. And then lastly, one, as a Packer fan, I was very frustrated about this, but also Josh Jacobs, higher than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. Before the season, I was like, I'm not going to bet on my Packers, but this one seemed way too easy not to take. He ended up fumbling on the 1-yard line as he was reaching out for the goal line. So that was unfortunate. Obviously, if he didn't fumble, probably would end up being a touchdown. So, yeah, unfortunate. We did lose $5 on that one. You'll notice I do bet $5 a lot of time because the main thing is once you start winning, you're playing with free money. There's no reason not to drain your whole account and bet all that free money and use your own money. So keep betting low and stacking your wins. Secondly, I had one for Sunday afternoon. Jamar Chase higher than 50.5 total yards. That was a deal. A discounted pick, his original slate was about 72.5. So he actually ended up with only 35 total yards. And then the second pick in that one was Pacheco, higher than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. Obviously, he got hurt late in that game, so that sucks for Pacheco. But that one ended up being a $5 loss as well. Finally, Monday Night Football, Falcons, Eagles. We ended up having really good intentions for this one. The common sense behind these picks, not common sense, the thought behind these picks were really well thought out. Obviously, some things did not hit. We bet $5 to win 89.6 with a five-man pick'em here on Underdog Fantasy. We had Young-Ho Koo higher than 1.5 field goals. Bijan higher than 66.5 rushing yards. Jalen Hurts higher than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. Jahan Dotson higher than 2.5 receptions, and Kyle Pitts higher than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. This one unfortunately did not hit that 4 out of 5 minimum to hit the flex. So that sucks. This was also a 20% profit boost deal on Underdog, so that would have been nice to hit that 4 out of 5 for the flex. But Young-Ho Koo had 3 field goals, so that's higher than 1.5 field goals made. Bijan had a crazy game. He actually exactly hit 30 yards over his line. Instead of being 66.5, he went up to 96 rushing yards. So he had a fantastic game. He played really well. Jalen Hurts, tush push on the 1 yard line late in the game, which was fantastic because I think a touchdown got called back because of a holding penalty. And then they ended up touchdown got held back because of a holding penalty, and then they ended up going to the 1 yard line. A little bit of a delay of game situation, and then he ended up running in and on a tush push. So those 3 hit. The one I was pissed about was mainly Jahan Dotson. He got elevated to the number 2 wide receiver because A.J. Brown was out, and he got 1 reception in the first drive. His slate was higher than 2.5. He got his first reception of the game in the first drive of the game, and ended up sticking with that 1 reception the whole game. Some guy named Covey had a great game for the Eagles. Obviously, Devonta Smith ended up with a touchdown, and Dallas Goedert over those over the middle crossing routes were very consistent. So that was unfortunate. Lastly, one person I will never put money on ever again is Kyle Pitts. Higher than 0.5 rushing receiving touchdowns. He had a touchdown in week 1. I was really high on Kyle Pitts. I think everyone was really high on Kyle Pitts, and he ended up not producing. Granted, they were putting a very speedy linebacker on him, also shadowing a safety over him most of the time. That's why they had a lot of good rushing yards. They were dedicating 2 people to Kyle Pitts most of the game, and then. Yes, we ended up not hitting, so we lost $5 overall because the wins really outweighed the losses. We ended with plus $20.80. So for betting small, for betting $5 a pop, ending in the weekend with $20.80, that's free golf this coming week. So that's fantastic. So yeah, those are last weekend's picks. Went a little crazy this weekend. I usually don't do that many 5 and 6 man pick'ems. I usually stay, I usually don't go higher than 4. So yeah. So moving into Thursday night football, we have the Patriots going to New Jersey to play the New York Jets. Some things I really liked, you see on the bottom of the ticker now, but I will switch over to the picks that we have slated for Thursday night football. Obviously, the top pick you see there, Ramondre Stevenson, higher than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. He started off fantastic. The New England Patriots are getting a push on the offensive line every single time they decide that they run the ball, and he's doing a fantastic job so far. So the Jets do not have a great rush defense, so I'm going to stick with this one. I'm pretty high on this one. One thing I forgot to mention, this is a 5-man bet. Or a $5 bet flexed. So 2 out of 3, or 3 out of 3 gets you a 3.79x. So winning of $18.95. And then a 2 out of 3 gets you a 1.2x. So you're just getting your money back, for a $6.30 win. So, yeah, I am pretty high on getting to at least 2 out of 3. Obviously, the next one that you see there is Aaron Rodgers, higher than 1.5 passing TDs. Last week he had 2 touchdowns. The week before he had 1 touchdown, but also could very easily had 2. New England's pass defense is average. I'm kind of just banking on Aaron Rodgers' veteran experience to, pick apart, maybe throw for just over 200 yards, but be very efficient against the New England Patriots defense. And lastly, we got Breece Hall higher than 65.5 rushing yards. The New England Patriots rush defense has been very, 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 very competitive so far this year. But Breece Hall, last time he rushed against the New England Patriots, he rushed for 178 yards and a touchdown, and that was last year's last game of the season. So playing against New England Patriots, very fresh. Obviously, the Patriots lost Judon on defense. I don't know how their defense is doing so well. Maybe they got a new DC. I don't really follow the Patriots that much, but I'm banking on Breece Hall being an absolute dog coming up this next weekend. So we'll switch back here. So yeah, those are the picks. That's the Thursday night slate. Those are last weekend's picks. This is basically how the podcast is going to podcast/show is going to kind of, be slated every single week. Obviously down here, if you're watching the podcast, down on the bottom of the screen, you'll see that ticker. Those are some not recommended. Those are some picks of interest. So obviously I have my slate for the upcoming game this Thursday, but there are some extra ones down there. You see now Hunter Henry higher than 32.5 receiving yards. I like that. He had a really good game last week. Aaron Rodgers higher than 211 passing yards. Hasn't gotten over 200 yards yet, but the New England Patriots pass defense is very average, so you could see that happening. I have some of the picks that I did pick. So Breece Hall higher than 65.5 rushing yards. Aaron Rodgers higher than 1.5 passing touchdowns, and Ramondre Stevenson higher than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. I do have those down there now too. So at the bottom, you will see every single week, 2 times a week, every Wednesday morning and Saturday morning, you will see some recommended picks. I usually don't do college football, but I was going to the Wisconsin-Alabama game, and I figured why not. So yeah. Well, thank you for tuning in to the first installation of Only the Over podcast. Follow us on Instagram. Follow the podcast on Instagram and YouTube down below so you can stay up to date with everything. And then obviously, if you're having issues gambling, there is details in the description that you can go give a call, or if you have a friend that you think may be in a situation, have them call that number. Obviously, don't bet what you can't lose, and gamble responsibly for sure. So, thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it, and we will see you on Saturday morning. Peace.